Yeah, these debates come up at the UN every now and again, but they don't come up that often because the people who raise these kinds of claims are very embarrassed by it. There is no developing nation on the planet who will sit by and allow this claim to be made, because they immediately take the floor to say, the Catholic Church provides the largest or the only health network in my country. The Catholic Church is the largest provider of healthcare in the world, and this is above and beyond anything that governments are able to do. So at the level of care, the Catholic Church is the one there. Even we can say in New York City, the first response to the AIDS crisis, which erupted in the gay community, was the Catholic Hospital of St. Vincent's. They were the only ones that received these people. People didn't know how the virus was transmitted. They didn't know what was going on. But St. Vincent's was in the village. This was the epicenter of the pandemic. And every single person went to St. Vincent's, and every single person was treated. So around the world, the reality is that the Catholic Church is the greatest provider of health care to everyone, whether they're Catholic or not, whether they are experiencing difficulties or not, whether their actions are in compliance with what the Church teaches or not. So that's the first thing that's very important to say. The second thing is that the data driving this assumption just isn't there. There's no data to support these claims. So when you look at HIV and AIDS, for instance, you can look at a lot of programs that have been established to take a look at how we're going to fight this. There are two main generalizations that are looked at now. One was made popular by the Ugandan proposal called ABC, so abstinence, behavior change, and condom use. The other is called CNN, condoms, needles, and negotiation. So these are the sort of general frameworks of the debate. The data is very clear. The only programs that reduce the spread of infection, so the rates of transmission, are abstinence and faithfulness campaigns, or the use of condoms if a person is not able to get out of what's already a highly compromised situation. But condom use alone is not showing in any data or evidence to either drive down or change rates of transmission. So for instance, a big study in Taiwan is cited to say there was a condom campaign in Taiwan. All of the brothels insisted that men who were flying into Taiwan or to have sex with other men or with women had to use condoms so that they would cut down the rates of transmission. The rates of transmission went down among sex workers in Taiwan. But when you take a look at the data about why that happened, it was not condom use. What happened was people got scared, they understood the gravity of the disease, and the rates of transmission went down because people got out of the sex trade or because people just stopped participating in certain activities. So this is very important to see that we have this idea. Now, what we do know is that condoms can contain the spread of infection of HIV and AIDS within the homosexual community if they're used consistently and well. What we also know is in the United States, in Russia, in many places across Europe, the incidence of disease is rising again because nobody likes to use them. Nobody does use them consistently and well. And with the rise of better medical care and all of the different, ARVs and possibilities for treatment, people are not using them. So the rates of transmission are back up. So the reality is that these are very loaded political statements, but the data doesn't back them up at all. There just is not data that shows that condom use prevents or reduces any of these things that it's claimed to prevent or reduce. And we see the same thing when we take a look at heterosexual activity, because the reason is this. If someone is engaging in multiple partner activities, whether they're homosexual or heterosexual, their rates of incidence of disease contraction are high. And condoms can maybe help to manage that, but you still have an upward trend. If someone is in a committed relationship, they don't use them. Maybe for the first 3 weeks or 3 months, but there's just a total drop-off in 12-month use. So all of this stuff is very important to go into, and you can certainly have a very clear debate. The evidence is there. We have evidence like this on all of these topics. We have our HIV/AIDS white papers, we have women's health, we have maternal health, we have all these population debates. If you know the data, you can defend all of these positions, but these are sort of floating comments in the culture that people have just adopted uncritically. And it's very important that you know the data so that you don't get into a heated exchange, but you can just say, well, here's what we know. And luckily, we're 20, 30, 40 years into this, and now we can actually look at the research. There's a lot of research out there, and all of the research is very clear.